Ladies and gentlemen, fellow leaders, dignitaries, good morning. I welcome you to day 2 of the National Space Conference with the theme entitled Space Science and Innovation for Sustainability. My name is Maud Nale. I'm honored to be serving as your Director of Ceremonies for day 2. Welcome to it. Today it's all about space, or the overarching theme for today's conference is space and economic sustainability. Just as a way of recap, yesterday was all about space and social sustainability, where it focused on the societal benefits of space science, focusing on how space-based solutions can enhance social equity. Today, we're shifting the conversation. It's going to be all about the economy. We're going to be examining the economic impact of space technologies, emphasizing their potential to drive innovation, foster economic growth, and sustainability. I want to acknowledge, and I was asked to do so, Major General Elmer de Villiers and any other dignitaries who I may have missed or I'm not seeing in the room. So to cater for everyone, I'm going to say all protocols observed. Leaders, I've been told to make an announcement just before we get started. If there's anyone who's yet to register, or maybe you came through yesterday and you did not get the bag, you're welcome to do so during tea time at the reception area, and they will be able to sort you out accordingly. You may have questions that you want to pose to the speakers during today's presentations, and you are welcome to do so via a website which is called slido.com. I'm going to spell that, SLIDO.com. I'll say that again, SLIDO.com. The minute you log onto there, if you were here yesterday, you would have interacted with the platform, but if you're here for the first time, you will log onto slido.com, and the hashtag or the code that we're using for today, it's different from yesterday. Every session has a different code. The code for the session that's about to begin is 333-7078. So this plenary that's about to start, 333-7078. So you log on to slido.com, you'll type in that code 333-7078, and you'll be able to pose your questions to the speakers there that will be addressed during the conversation. Please don't come to me after the session and say you had a question and you didn't know how to pose it. Use the platform, and I see everything is on the screen, to be able to pose your questions. I'll mention the code for the next session when we get to that point in time. I am the Director of Ceremonies, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm also the Director of Time. And if you're seeing me for the first time, hopefully not, but if you are, I will also be directing the time. It's very important that we respect time today, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very bumper program, and the unfortunate part is if we allow one plenary or one session to go over time, it's going to have a ripple effect on the entire day. We're not going to have tea on time, we're not going to have lunch on time. You're going to hate me because we're going to leave here late, and it's not going to end well. And so I brought some things to help us with time, and this is especially for the speakers. I've had a chat already to moderator number 1, so if moderator number 2 is in the house, hopefully I'll see him at some point. I'm going to be using these. Let's pretend they're cards, but they're not cards. These, let's think of them as the traffic lights. When we see the green, green means go. And so when you're 15 minutes, moderator number 1, 15 minutes to go, I will raise this one. It is green in color. When you have 10 minutes to go, I will raise the yellow traffic light. And I know in South Africa, red somehow means we must go fast and you must run. And then you get angry because the person behind you, in front of you, stopped. But today, red is going to mean your time is up. You're going to see me walk onto the stage, and that means for you, moderator, and for you in the audience, the speaker has 5 minutes. You also have 5 minutes to pose your questions to the panel. And then maybe if I'm generous, I'll let it continue, but likely not. Then we will applaud them off the stage so that they do not waste any time. Today we're going to aim to start on time. We're a little bit late, but like Fly Safi, I'm going to try my best to make us land on time. So every session will start on time, end on time. And ladies and gentlemen, today we're not going to waste any time. So let us get started with our first session, which is a plenary. And let me just get to the program. The first session, which is plenary 1, remember to ask your questions on the app, is all about commercial space ventures and sustainable growth, where we will be exploring how commercial space ventures contribute to economic sustainability. I'm going to introduce the session moderator who will go ahead and then introduce his speakers. His name is Leseja Mahoba, and I'm going to call you onto the stage, Leseja, and you'll take over. Remember, you have 90 minutes. When you see me on the stage, it means your time is up. Over to you.
For all the sci-fi fans in the building, live long and prosper. It is an absolute honor to be here with you and to be up here with the following people that are absolutely amazing. And they will today, in one way or another, share the reason why they get up in the morning and do what they do, and why they find it absolutely fascinating and fulfilling. Okay, I'm going to call you guys with your first names. I hope that'll be okay. Okay, let's start with James, Anamia, Michael, Ndelisa, Rob, and Lorita. While they're making their way up, I want to share a reminder. Remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Okay. There we go. The Department of Science and Innovation has a model that they like to use when we discuss some of these complex matters. As a point of reference, this is the food, energy, water nexus. I beg to argue that we need to also include intelligence to that nexus. So for today, it will be food, energy, water, intelligence nexus. That being said, talking about commercialization, a few things come to mind. The first is the matter of Moloch that is often referred to in the AI space, but in all intents and purposes applies also to all commercial endeavors. What is Moloch, you might ask? It is an endless pursuit for absolute wealth at any cost. That is not the spirit of commercialization. The spirit of commercialization should be to grow your community, to be able to develop your capability, and to ensure that the next generations will be better off. All right, I think that's an important context. All right, enough of the serious talk. I would like to jump right into the deep end, ladies and gentlemen. That you can tell us what is the secret sauce that has made all of this so delicious and sumptuous that we can compete globally. James, let's start with you.
Let's see if the tech works. Thanks very much. Very pleased to be here. Hi to all the audience. I think I meant to say good morning. Everybody's meant to say. It's going to be one of those days. So secret sauce, thanks very much. My story I like to tell is I arrived here, you can tell from the accent I'm from the UK. Came down here just over 10 years ago with a couple of suitcases and a business idea. And we're now, 10 years later, 130 people turning over best part of 250 million rand. How do we do that? That's a great question. What's the secret sauce? And it's business 101. If you understand the market and you develop a product that suits that market, then people come and buy it. If you make that product at a price, a sales price higher than what it costs you to make, then you make profit, and you can then plow that back into the business. So there is no secret sauce. The secret sauce is the same as any business. You just have to understand the market, supply to that market, and you will be successful.
Thanks, Anna. Please proceed and introduce yourself too.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. All protocols observed. I'm from Samira Sense. As many of you know, we build Earth observation payloads for small satellites in Cape Town. We started in 2018, so we're just about 6 years old. And what I would say, everything James has said is of course very true, but I think when it comes to the space industry and whether you're South African or European or American, grit is part of the secret sauce of creating a successful commercial space company. You need to have resilience, and you need to push through because it's not easy. The technology that we're developing is difficult, but if you have grit and you push through, I believe that is what makes the commercial companies, especially here in South Africa, so successful.
Thank you.
Morning all. For lack of introduction, my name is Michael Bretzker. I'm one of the co-founders and directors of Swift Geospatial. I guess the secret sauce, well, I'm looking at it from a downstream perspective. So I normally take all the fancy stuff that the upstream boys do and girls do and try and convert that into products. But I would say the secret sauce with Swift is making mistakes. Often people are too scared to ask the stupid question or too scared to make mistakes. But I think in making mistakes, you learn from those mistakes and you hopefully do not make the same mistake again moving forward. A classic example that we fell into in the very beginning was assuming that we knew what the end client wanted, assuming that we knew what the person on the street wanted as a solution. We thought we knew everything from the top, and we knew the capabilities and the technology, and we can produce this product and we can sell this product without actually consulting if they even want that product in the first place. So I'd say make those mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and then move forward. Thanks.
Proceed.
Hi, good morning. I'm Robert van Salle, Managing Director of AEC Space Africa. From my accent, you can probably tell that I'm from South Africa. And I think the secret that we just discovered, there's more than one secret sauce. Each one I've come up with a different source. The other one that I want to touch on, hopefully we'll get some time to explain that, is partnerships. I am very much a result, living result if you wish, of partnerships ever since I got into the space industry. And many of the partners I would like almost to mention by name. I see Malisi here, Ms. Majaja, Lishu, and many others. So for me, other than a transactional business case, if you want, I'm selling you something, I move on to the next one. It's more about long-term partnerships. It doesn't give you immediate results, but as we've seen now over the past 10 years and the recent investment from the AC Clyde Space Group into South Africa, into us, it's got legs. So that's my message for the morning.
Delisa.
Good morning. Morning, everyone. My name is Ndilisa Didiza. I am the founder and managing director of Khutazo Innovations, which is a very vibrant location intelligence business that primarily services the engineering, mining, and environmental industries. We support them with GIS and, of course, remote sensing. I like this topic of the secret sauce because I always say entrepreneurship, we don't share these things up until it becomes school fees you learn and then you have to, pay for that learning. But thanks to my colleagues for sharing, and I certainly relate. One of our secret sources at Rotatso Innovations is really, like Michael mentioned, always being a student, because through that, you get to understand what challenges or what questions your client is trying to solve or to answer. And in you learning, you can then best advise in terms of how to answer that. So that's certainly one. The second one, which has also been mentioned here in this panel, is definitely relationships. It is through those relationships that we are able to, as a country, make things happen. I'm very passionate about making things happen, and I always say that alone I cannot do it, but together we certainly can. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lorita Cristales. I'm from Dragonfly Aerospace. And yeah, I agree with all the secret sources that were mentioned here. I can add to that what I've seen in the last 4 years with our experience is that the team coming together, that's the relationships, with a deep capability, engineering capability that we've seen yesterday come from many years of input into this capability. But it's not only the special engineering capability, but also the engineering attitude. And that goes with the grit that was mentioned, that whatever the problem is, even a technical problem or a problem from something that we completely cannot control, we have to face it, we have to find a solution, there's no other way. We'll make a plan, we do it, and we do it together as a team. So for me, the secret sauce was the teamwork together and the engineering capability with the engineering attitude. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting that you seem to have very different secret sources. I wonder what would happen if we partnered on a global level and surprise the rest of the world in the different regions. Something to mull over in the context of partnership, Michael. That being said, please give us your view, strong man and argument, or perhaps, weak man it if you so wish, what we would lose if the space industry were not feasible to commercialize. James?
I'll try and keep it brief, but that's a really big question. A lot of space was started for scientific purposes, understanding the planet. Of course, global warming is a classic example of that. In terms of commercialization, the next phase was communications. Communications is vital for every developing nation and for developed nations. So that if you didn't have commercialization of space, you would only have those kind of things run by government, which is never going to be efficient, never going to be progressing fast. So it needs to be taken on by the private sector. And private sector is now taking on the science challenge as well with exploration. Look at Elon Musk wanting to go to Mars and become king. I'm not sure that's a great example, but it's an example of commercialization. In terms of the local community, there was a lot of talks yesterday about the benefits of space to society, and I think that's what this conference is about, and we should focus on that. So I focus on that. Rural communications, I think it's really important. There was a great comment yesterday from my colleague I see here from Angola about whether we're talking the right language, and he brought up the subject of there are a lot of people in this country and across Africa who don't have communications. All the other things we're talking about, inspiration and security of launch and access to space, all these things, if you can't communicate that with your society, if society doesn't understand why you're doing these things, then you've already lost the argument. So Let's stick with the basics. Let's start with commercialization of communications first, then commercialization of Earth observation, because there was 101 examples of why EO can be of benefit to society. So what would happen to the nation if we didn't commercialize? As I say, I think things would happen slower, things would happen more inefficiently, things would happen more expensively, which for a nation like South Africa, we can't afford to spend lots of money on exquisite systems. We need to focus on good economic choices that do the systems that we need at a price that is affordable by the nation based on the tax base. I think I've probably said enough. Let me offer the choice to some of the other people on the panel.
Adam,
Yes, I think, as James said, we can spend the rest of the plenary talking about this topic. So what would we lose without commercialization of space? So I'm gonna take it. One thing that I learned in the last session of yesterday was that money talks. So I'm going to take it to the economic impact and just looking at the impact that Samira Sense has had to the local economy. So to start off with, all of our revenue that we get into and cash essentially that we get into the company come from international funds. So whether it's customer revenue or investment, it's international. And of that, year to date, we've spent approximately 80 million rand in our local economy. Now, if we weren't able to commercialize space, that 80 million would not come into the country at all and be spent there. So I went and I looked because there's a direct impact, right? So there's the 80 million that we've spent year to date approximately. And then I went and looked at our direct impact in terms of employment. Now we've got about 60 employees in Samira Sense, and we've got a rather large salary bill. But just looking at that direct salary bill doesn't tell the whole story. You have to look at the indirect multipliers, and taking the closed input-output multipliers. I actually did some research to get to these values. The contribution to employment in South Africa by just Samira Sense, and I mean, if I look at Newspace, which is a much bigger company, it must be exorbitantly more. But just looking at the indirect contribution to employment in South Africa, it's about 235 million rand a year. And if you could not commercialize space, that funding would not flow into the economy and into society. So I think it would be incredibly detrimental to not commercialize space and not focus on industry, and for a government to not support industry, because it is clear that industry is actually having a very, very positive economic impact.
Indeed. Rob?
Yeah, on my side, it's actually pretty simple. I think there's two main factors. Obviously, Swift is still a very small company, so only 8 years. Started off with 3 people, up now at 10 people. It doesn't sound like an awful lot, but the amount of work that they can achieve is really incredible. And I think that's the first part of my 2 parts is we'll lose a lot of expertise. And I think a lot of those expertise that are coming out of Varsity at the moment are incredible. And those are just the ones that have had the privilege to come out of Varsity. So there's still a massive untapped unemployment that can branch into those next levels. But for us, it would be the loss of those skill sets within South Africa, because ultimately, if it's not commercialized, they will look elsewhere to apply their skills. And we simply cannot lose any of those skill sets that are coming to the forefront. The next one on my side would be along the lines of sustainability. Right? There needs to be a drive and speed in order to combat global warming or climate change scenarios. And I think a lot of that drive does come from the private sector. So I think if we don't commercialize these types of things, we will lose out and we'll be behind the 8 ball.
Thank you. I just want to answer that question slightly different. Space is commercialized out there. Perhaps not in South Africa to the full extent of exploiting the impact that it should have. So what I want to say is that Africa, the region in Africa, simply needs to catch up to what's already being done elsewhere in the world. And this is where I want to just box in. My life is full of boxes, as you know, 1 use, 2 use, 16 use. But I want to box it in to partnerships again. Saying that we have to catch up, in the old days when I started, and it was with vision from the Space Agency and others, that we rallied around a 1U CubeSat and trained a lot of students back in the days when I was still with academia. Now that was explicitly driving the mission, was HCD. We don't really have that luxury anymore because the window of opportunity may just pass, and then it becomes more and more difficult to have the sovereign commercialization window that we currently have. So instead of explicitly defining missions around HCD, we should do it implicitly. So what we bring to the table lately is that we will partner with you. I like the word relationships more actually, thank you. So we will form relationships with you, and we will help you build real value-add missions. Part of that, implicitly, is capacity building. And I think this is the key difference to what we bring to the table, is that the end goal, or the explicit goal, is not to train students. That will come. The explicit goal should be value that space brings to the continent. All of the other puzzle pieces will fall together. So I just want to come back to that. Space is already commercialized. We must just see how we can increase impact locally by partnering with governments, by partnering with agencies, by partnering with academia. The secret sauce is obviously commercial, because they are a most effective platform of bootstrapping all of these great ideas and institutional funding to create more impact. Thank you.
One of the reasons I went into business is because I don't like to be told what to do. Now, if we don't commercialize, we are going to be told what to do, and we are going to consumer. And that's not the South Africa that I imagine. That's not the Africa that I imagine. So those, for me, are the highlights. And then, lastly, I'm sure quite a number of you did get to see the World Economic Forum study or report in collaboration with Deloitte that estimated this industry, the Earth observations industry, to be valued at $700 billion by 2030. Please have a look at that, and you'll see why we definitely cannot not commercialize. Thanks.
Yeah, once again, just to agree with everyone, I think the local impact from economic local impact from building a satellite, for example, it starts by buying electronic components, specialized connectors, PCBs, manufacturing, assembly, material, harnesses, testing, specialized contractors. So there's a wide range of support that we give to the industry just to be able to get a satellite out of the door. I think even from a logistic point of view, like we work very closely with our logistics partners, and for them it was also a fantastic learning curve to do a project like this and actually ship a satellite together. So yeah, the local impact, we currently employ about 50 people in South Africa, so that's very important. I also agree with the resource loss. I think people will want to work in space, have the fantastic we have the fantastic resources in terms of people, and they will go elsewhere and develop that commercialization elsewhere. Yesterday we saw the cycle, the systems problem, and to be able to actually solve the problems, also solve the problems that we have, we need to mature that whole chain, like Prof. Mostert said yesterday. And I think to be in commercializing this industry, it's the only way that we can sustainably actually solve our problems and get the value. Like you say, not only doing it as, but actually getting the value as the means to the end, and not just the development itself. So yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Oh, I just want to add as well, if we have a pause in this capability development, how long would it take us to then get back on track again?
So I just want to follow up on one sort of government 101 comment, which I hope someone else in the panel would raise. But there's a difference, and the question is commercialization. I mean, you can exploit space in government, and lots of governments do this. They hire lots of people, they do data processing, they fund programs. The difference between exploitation in government and commercialization is for each government employee, if you take, to make the sum simple, 33% tax on PAYE, it takes 2 people who are funded commercially from commercial contracts or from exporting to fund each person in government. So yes, government can do this, and yes, government can exploit space, but it costs too much. And I don't want to disrespect the speaker from yesterday, but it was mentioned that, you know, Air Force services are free. Air Force is paid for by taxpayers. It's not free. It's paid for by commercial companies who generate taxes. So you need to move the exploitation of space outside of government into commercial industry, and that's the only way to make it affordable.
Hundreds. Lorita, we're going to start with you and reverse the process a little bit. How do we 10x for growth to reinforce sustainability? Is the impact of 4IR, blockchain, AI, 3D printing, materials technologies like graphene, or even digital lasers coming into the mix in terms of lights out machining?
Yeah, I think maybe I can just add on definitely on the AI track. There is an immense amount of data available. We've, in the last year and a half, we've generated about in the petabyte amount of data from our satellite, and how to create value from that. And I think by looking at other avenues, like for example, what we can do with machine learning to see is there avenues that can do more than just the traditional model of producing a data product to level 1C or 2A. And so there's, I think, in terms of the amount of data that we can produce, there is a lot to be done to understand how we can multiply our effort using machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Thank you. Delisa?
No, quite true. From a downstream perspective, which is where we operate within Kgothatso Innovations, definitely we've deployed, or rather we've developed models together with our academic partners in order for us to be able to do the processing that our clients need in the speed that they need it. So we cannot undervalue, you know, the role of using that intelligence or using those tools in order to get to that point. I think I'll stop it there for now. Thank you.
Thanks. Please feel free to tell me if it's impossible to 10x where we are currently. Is it possible to 10x our current revenue, or is it feasible? What do you need? Please proceed.
Me?
Yes.
Oh,
Please.
that's for me. I'm thinking on my feet here. I think if you really want to 10x or 100x, I'm not sure quite what the value is, but you have to go from upstream and merge it with the downstream. And this is what our company, our group is doing. We can do all the hardware in the world. We are very great at that. We are now also going into the data services, and we can actually marry the hardware supporting the applications implicitly, to use that word again. And I think once those two come together and you package the services absolutely credible, quality, useful, impact, I mean, 10x is just the first step then. So and that's what we are facing. And just to throw in real things, we are at the cutting edge of AIS Generation 2, for instance. We're developing with partners again, the next generation of AIS, which is VDES. Very, very few companies in the world do that. We do it here. And we are going to start providing those constellations from next year. Laser communications, we do that. You know, there's all sorts of things. We're looking at scalable manufacturing, because that's necessary through expansion program. So reconfigurability of platforms, these are the things we're looking at. But the merging, not sure what the verb is, the merging of downstream and upstream and midstream I think that's where the multiplication comes in.
Thanks. Great question. Often thought about this myself. Not to that, didn't think I would be airing my thoughts in front of so many people. But it's normally after a bottle of wine where I get stuck into my thinking. But I think in this case, I was just looking at some figures yesterday in preparation for this. And for argument's sake, Planet Labs has 200 plus minus satellites in orbit currently, right? 10 years ago, there weren't even 200 satellites in orbit. Right. 8 years ago, probably there weren't even 200 satellites in orbit. Today and moving forward, I think there's like over 1,000 satellites, right? And you might think, okay, well, that's a good method to move into 10x. I don't think so. I think just because we have 1,000 satellites in orbit doesn't necessarily mean that we are progressing within this space, and that's what's going to make us. It's like, congratulations, but we still need the downstream to use those satellites in order to create something, else it's just going to be flying around and no one's going to be using it. So for me, if we're looking at it from a downstream 10x perspective, it's about understanding a little bit more on what's going to be launched. How can downstream provide a little bit more input into saying, you know what, a 4-band is great, but can we not push it into hyperspectral? Can we not look at 32 or 64 bands where we can start driving a little bit more information from, right? To enter into new markets, to enter into new industry areas that we can then maybe not go to 10x, but maybe go to 2, 3, or 4x along those lines. I'll give you a good example. About a week ago or so, somewhere around there, Planet launched a satellite called Tanager, which is a hyperspectral satellite, but its main goal is to monitor GHG emissions, right? Methane, carbon dioxide. So now, people that have your carbon net zero and you want to understand your emissions, this now provides insight into what's happening at a large scale and accountability as a big brother to monitor areas of what people say that they're doing to what they're actually doing, right? Not to kind of get a big stick to hit them with, but it's understanding that, what you say and what you actually do can now be monitored. And I think through maybe looking at those types of initiatives from a downstream perspective once again and applying that into commercialization, we can start getting up to 10x, or maybe even more, who knows?
Thank you. Anna?
All right, so I think from my perspective, I'm gonna take it that how Industry 4 AI, automation, etc., impacts our organization and our output. So our aim is 10 times in the next 3 to 4 years, and that's from a company organizational growth, company output point of view. I think it would be senseless not to exploit automation and AI within your organization, and you would not be commercially competitive in the next 2 to 3 years if you do not exploit AI and Industry 4 in your organization, whether it is your financial systems and reporting structure or your production pipeline or your production line and automating that. We are constantly looking and encouraging our team to think out of the box in terms of how to automate, how to streamline the production process so that it can be a more competitive product and eventually generate more revenue in the long term. And I think from a sustainability point of view, which is what we're talking about at this conference, a sustainable way forward is to continue to embrace the new stream of technology that's being developed in the world.
Yeah, thanks on the 100x thing. I think it's really important to nurture startups. If you take my case of New Space, we are 100x from where I started in terms of both revenue, employment, taxes. You never know which of the startups are going to be successful and which aren't. So you have to, as a government, that's where they can step in and help is nurture startups. I'll address specifically the Industry 4.0 because it's something close to my heart. I've coined a phrase which I'm trying to get out there, which is IR 4.1, which is the African version. Industrial Revolution 4.0 is very much a manifestation of the West, which has really got completely out of control in terms of cost of living, salaries, etc. So what do? You try and get rid of the people, you put in robots, you put in automation, you put in AI and ML systems. We don't have that problem in Africa, as was mentioned yesterday. We've got 50% youth unemployment. We have a massive untapped resource. So how can we augment those skills? So use some of this technology not to replace people, but to help people do their job better, higher quality, reduce some of the repetition and make it a bit more interesting to come into work every day. So we very much are interested in employing people rather than replacing people with robots. So remember, you heard it here, IR 4.1.
IR 4.1. Lorita, over to you with regards to what do we need to see in our financial industry to support high-tech exports? You would note in a couple of other stock exchanges, you'd have an aerospace index. You'd have a very extensive suite of insurance products. What is the environment currently in South Africa? What can be done?
Yeah, I think definitely insurance is an important service to understand and support the satellite industry with. Yeah, I think also enabling partnerships, as mentioned before. I think an important thing in getting more value out of a satellite. Yesterday it was mentioned about working together. The revisitation of a satellite is an important requirement, but the cost of putting up the satellites or the constellation that enables that revisitation need for the end user is obviously very costly. So it needs to be looked at how it can be done together in partnerships. So maybe some structures around that.
Thank you.
So I'll talk from my personal experience with the engagements that we've had with bankers. And these are probably networking events or other conferences and so forth. What I've experienced is that our space, now I have to be careful about saying our space is not understood. Our space arena is not understood by people that could invest in it. And I feel that if they could fully understand the value and fully understand how it all comes together, why it's important for us to be putting money into making sure that our farmers have the earth intelligence that they need in order to protect our food and ensure food security and so forth. If they don't get that, then it's very difficult to say now we can now start putting more funds, we can bring in the investors, because I always say that we cannot ignore, other institutions. There's government, yes, who's very much, supportive and doing what they can. But remember, we also need the private institutions that have got a lot of money. But they cannot invest in something that they don't understand. So I think as a country, we really do need to put more effort in educating those outside this industry so that they can also understand the value and see their role in us taking it, to the next level and further.
Thank you.
Questions are getting more difficult. And the water doesn't help. I think we must look at what concerns financial investors and platforms out there, and one is risk. So I think just going back, thanks to partnerships, I think the TIAs of the world, the DTIs of the world, everybody institutionally should partner with financial institutions, to free up more funding. I always think that government should not put everything in. They can leverage I mentioned this small thing about government may fund a launch, and that gives a lot of companies in this room heritage, and from there they did what they need to do and commercialize from there. But that de-risking initially was a partnership essentially with government, and I think that partnership should be institutionally expanded so that you bring in the financial houses to also finance what we do. I think that will also partly help the fact that investors like to invest outside. If I look Pan-Africa now, they don't necessarily look inside to the remarkable technologies and companies we have here. I think we all need to, all of us need to make an effort that we get more of that funding that we know is going outside, either through procurement or investments, and keep it here. And then just lastly, I think we must get financial companies buy-in into what we do. There's value for them in it, not just an IRR. We can reduce risk, we can optimize ship routes, and that has huge implications to the Lloyds of the world. I'm not batting for them now, but these are the things that I think we need to do in messaging. I almost want to think that the financial issues should not be an issue. There is money, I believe. And I think if we all put our case together, and certainly we have a strong case. I see some of the comments here. You see the ingredients of the cake to be baked. We have to bake that cake and we have to sell it and eat it. Thank you.
Just to top up on that, from an SME perspective or small business perspective, I think one of the things that we need to be quite aware of is to always remain funding ready. We tend to think that when these opportunities come, it's just a matter of applying and all things are good to go and the funds are allocated. But it's quite key, and I'm really talking to the smaller businesses in the room, for us to be always funding ready. Are we talking about a lot of investors? One of the key words is ESG. Is your business in compliance? What are those policies for yourself as well? Are you in line with their own policies? Because no one wants to put money into you if you are doing exactly the opposite of what they stand for. So I think that's quite key as well, especially from a small business and other businesses perspective. Thanks.
Once again, it's nice to be in the middle, that I don't have to go first every time. Quite enjoying that. It gives me time to think. But I mean, ultimately, to echo what's been said, but more so on the small business side, because we have the same pains. To put things into perspective, my mom thinks I do weather, right? She has no idea what I do. So every day she's like, oh, what's the weather going to look like? I'm like, Mom, I didn't study meteorology. I don't know. That's not what I do. And when people, my friends say, what do you do? Do you do rocks? Do you do? And I'm like, no, I kind of do Google Earth, but not really. And we do Earth observation, but not really. But therein lies the problem, is that for us, it's a continuous education of the market. First of all, what a satellite is, which is no easy thing. But I'm talking to preaching to the converted here. And then what that satellite can do, and the return of investment, and how, if you do this, you can save money here and whatever. And those processes takes a really long time, because it's a continuous kind of education. And just when you think that you've done something in a certain sector, another sector comes up and another sector comes up. And what I'm trying to allude to is that we're just battling in general to try and get that education across as the benefits of it. Everyone knows accounting and doctors and lawyers and everything. But in the geospatial world, it's kind of lacking behind. Meanwhile, everyone uses GIS and remote sensing every day of their lives. They just don't know about it. And it's about trying to bridge that gap, or that knowledge gap, to say, we are the people that actually are doing it for you. You just don't know about it. And then on closing, I mean, from our experience for funding and these types of things, we get requests often from people outside of South Africa. In Africa, Europe, America, for funding, angel investment funding, opportunities to buy into the company, to expand the company. Never once have we got anything internally.
So government support in terms of, how can they stimulate commercial companies or support commercial companies in growing and being successful from a startup to a scale-up organization. I feel like streamlining processes within government that you require to operate your business is absolutely vital. Continuing to do that, whether it is export regulations, whether it is applying for launch permits, whether it is just getting your visa or your passport so that you can travel to your customers abroad. Going back to automation and optimizing those processes really would help, especially on a startup phase when you're well established. You've kind of gotten the gist of what you need to do and how long in advance you already need to apply for something, because it takes long. But when you're a startup company, you do not have that resources. So supporting organizations with bureaucracy would, I think, be a massive support from a government. And then just to echo what my colleagues have been saying, the ignorance of the financial community as to the benefits that the space industry can provide, and also the risk factors of the space industry and the fact that it can be a profitable commercial organization became very apparent to us as an organization when we started looking for investment. We approached quite a few South African entities, and they did not understand, like my fellow panelists have said, they did not understand the industry, they did not understand the value that could be added. So that definitely, I'll echo that, is a big way in which the government can help by educating the country in the benefits of space. And then finally, and this is a point close to my heart and something that helped me initially very much, or our organization initially very much, is supporting us with marketing and conference arrangements. There's a big conference every year, the IAC, and when we started, SANSA sponsored the entire booth and always organized it, sometimes last minute, but at least it was organized. And that was really beneficial, and I think especially to startup companies as well, to get your name out there, to get your brand out there. It was wonderful to be at the last conference and to be able to, where people initially, when we started in 2018, we had to approach everybody and tell them about us. And at the last conference, we were at the SANSA booth and everybody came to us, which was great. And that's how a company can grow when they get supported to showcase themselves globally.
Yeah, some really great points from the rest of the panel, which I just want to build on slightly. I think, as Robert says, there is commercial funding available, but I'll say it's available for credible companies and credible ideas. It's not available for non-credible ideas. And a lot of the people here and a lot of the successful companies, the larger companies in South Africa, have proven that credibility, but it's gone to foreign investors. So the question I'm posing to the audience is, why are the companies up here credible to international investors, but not credible to South African and African investors? And then the second question I'd pose is, what can government do? So, okay, commercial funding sorted. What do we do about government funding? Government funding is limited. So how do you target it? And to me, I would say you should be funding startups and companies to show their credibility, because if you can prove their credibility, and that means things like demo launches and heritage, then they can go and get the commercial funding. And then the twist on that is government is funding a lot of things, and government is in a great position to fund things which aren't market ready, so they're not yet credible. So that's a great thing for them to fund, but they also maybe are funding things that aren't credible, and that's why they're not getting commercial funding. So government needs to look at, what are they spending their money on? Are they spending money on trying to commercialize by creating credibility for commercial companies, or are they doing projects that are never ever going to be commercially successful or spun out.
Hundreds. Rob, let's see. What are the new frontiers in space beyond communication, navigation, EO, and launching that we should be keeping an eye on for the value chain? Should we be looking at asteroid mining, tourism in space, debris removal, solar systems in outer space? What value chain in this new frontier of space might give us more return?
Was that for me?
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a joke and end with a joke. Who was the brigadier or general with one joke yesterday? That's very hard to say. Really, it's immensely hard. I think in my lifetime, and what's probably a bit more immediate, is that we should see emerging of all of that, and that's probably a cop-out. I think it's a good answer, vaguely enough, so that nobody understands it. But you know, the things about debris removal, I mean, that's a natural outflow if we look at space sustainably. And we can't look at this mega constellation of 1,000, and I'm going to do this now with another 1,000, and I'm going to do this now with another 1,000. It's just not sustainable. So I don't want to look at applications. I think we must just look at mergence, getting more sort of interoperability in the system. At least this is what we are driving from within the group. We're quite a wide group. We can define standards internally and to our customers. I'm not saying we should do that to everybody, but I would say the thing that stands out is that if we want to use space sustainable and even want to think about getting past all the satellites in orbit to get to mining out there, we really have to start looking at how we operate in space sustainably and look at it holistically. We can't just look at it one mission at a time anymore, or one country at a time anymore, for that matter.
Thanks. Michael, is a galactic highway possible now that Nokia is looking at setting up a cell phone network on the moon? Where are we going? We're just building up on this. We're just building up on this. Come.
It was perfect.
I guess from my side, it's, if I just pick space travel or something like that, I think it's pretty pointless unless you're a billionaire, right? And I think whatever we decide to do in the ventures of space needs to be for the inclusivity of everyone, not just the super rich. And unfortunately, that's the only way that I see it. Mining in space, whatever, it's going to just benefit whatever's above the cream of the crop. And so unless there's a overarching plan to support humanity as a whole, please don't do it.
Your analogy was quite apt. Somebody was telling me about Irish coffee, and above the cream of the top, you've got those chocolate sprinkles. Okay, and then yeah.
Yeah, so this is a difficult one to answer, and I think if I look at the South African context and the African context as a whole, for us to sustainably participate in the space race, we should look at what we're doing well. What we're doing well is we're supplying components well. We're focused. We've got companies who laser focus on areas of expertise that they do very well. And if we want to, and this is my opinion, if we want to sustainably participate in the forefront of space activities, whether that is going to Mars, whether that is building a highway to the moon, or whatever you want to do, let's focus on expert components that can participate in those missions, where we can contribute to those missions using our laser focus expertise, because there is so much expertise in this country, and using that to sustainably participate in the new frontier of the space race.
Sounds good. James, I'm going to leave you for last. James.
Yeah, I'm going to actively not answer the question. And in the time that I save, I'm going to say why, which refers back to a lot of the things I said earlier. I mean, this conference is about sustainable use of space for societal benefit. I don't even want to see launches and deep space and asteroid mining on the agenda. I think these are great things to talk about, and let's go and have a glass of wine or a beer and talk about it. But this conference should be focusing on societal benefit, getting communications, education, e-health into the rural areas, taking Earth observation data which helps us with fishing, with forestry, with disaster management. Let's focus on those things and talk about the other stuff outside of this conference.
All right, James. You drive a very, very hard bargain. We've got two speakers still that need to share their thoughts on this one. Ndilisa, Lorita, please share.
I'm with James. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I can just resonate the same. I think we've spoken given some thought to situational spatial awareness. We've done a bit of exploratory work on lunar, but at the moment for us also to, like Mia also said, do what you do well, and what's the next step? For us to go to sub-meter is the next step. It's a small delta in terms of technology. We can do that, so we're looking just to the next step and trying to do that well.
Fantastic. I'm going to jump onto Slido and pick up a couple of questions. Let's see what we've got over here. How can private sector contribute to enhancing national security through AI without compromising national security interests or creating new vulnerabilities? National security and private sector. Where is the link? Sure. Thanks, Michael.
Take a stab at that. I guess, once again, I'm not going to drum it in too much, but once again, downstream, so I'm not too sure what's happening on the top end. So really, from my side, if I'm looking at national security, I'm already biased towards then, obviously, like military operations or conducting safe military operations. And in order to do that, and I'm not a military man at all, but I've watched enough Hollywood movies, to understand the layout of the land, right? Understand what's there. So you might be planning a mission, but the mission in your data set that you have on the ground says that the bridge is still there. And then when the team is deployed, the bridge is actually not there anymore, or a certain vehicle can't drive over a certain area because the slope is too steep for that particular vehicle, or whatever it might be. But it's that type of operational intelligence that you need to be able to retrieve and get in order to run safe missions effectively, whether that is for protecting borders or for peacekeeping missions or for whatever happens in the shadows. I don't really care, but it's about having that good data sets that are coming in. And then just to further echo onto that for national security, something similar to the launching of Legion from Maxar, obviously with its 6, 30-centimeter satellites, 15, revisits per day over a particular site. These types of things start to become of interest for national security. But what do you do with all of that data? What do you do with all of that imagery? So unless you have the capability downstream in order to create value and decision support, it basically all falls flat. So I think, once again, that link between upstream and downstream is incredibly vital, not only to national security, but to all sectors.
Andres, another taker?
Just throw in 2 cents. I mean, I'm kind of famous for government bashing, and you've probably heard some of it already today. But there is a real need, certainly in Africa, definitely per nation, for secure access to space. We heard a lot of that on the first day. Much that I'm bashing launch vehicles from the commercial point of view, if you want to have access to space which is not dependent on other nations, then you do need to develop an indigenous launch capability. I think what I'm trying to say is, don't use the excuse that this is being done for commercial reasons. Say to Treasury, we need this for security reasons, and be honest about it. And then get Treasury to fund it kind of outside of the space budget, because it's effectively a security budget.
Yeah, I just think.
sorry.
No, you go
Please
first.
go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sorry. I think that's also where the whole notion of co-creating comes into play, because we cannot create these technologies, or we cannot use this AI without fully understanding, your environments, especially from a security kind of interest and level. So it's quite important that when we set up these models, when we test them, we do it together with the end user, because then it's much easier and quicker, and we can pick up, those vulnerabilities much earlier. So definitely co-creation for us is quite a key word in a lot of the work that we do, in a lot of things that we come up with as well.
Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with that. Sort of what I also wanted to say. But there's a lot of innovation on the commercial side. I mean, that's where innovation is driven and scaled up. And I think the missing link, surprisingly, is that much of our secure communications in the military, etc. I'm not a military person, but if you don't own the asset, I mean, I sort of have doubts about that. I think what the commercial side can bring is cutting-edge technology and all of that. And I think what government then as a partner brings to the table is, of course, support commercial companies to provide those sovereign platforms that's now almost ubiquitously available, cutting edge at a reasonable cost. I sound like a second-hand car salesman now. But I think the new space since 2001, not James's company, I'm talking about the paradigm, has brought this emergence of, I'm stating the obvious, I know, emergence of government and commercial, but let the commercial companies be allowed to grow and scale, explore new frontiers, and then provide these sovereign platforms to government, if we talk security specifically.
Anna?
Can I answer a specific question
Sure,
on here?
go for it. Go for it.
Luke Skywalker, thank you for your question. How is the space sector in South Africa bringing other sectors on board? How is this important for further commercialization? So something that it is close to my heart is, we're the upstream, but our upstream is our component suppliers and our electronic suppliers and our manufacturers, etc. And something that lies close to my heart is the fact that you can't have a forest with just one tree. You need many trees, many plants, many animals to make a forest. And if you can manufacture mechanical components or optical components for space cameras, and I'm using space cameras as an example because that's my area of expertise. It is such precision manufacturing and engineering that can then spill out and provide components to the aviation industry, to any industrial industry, because they're at the top, what the cream, the sprinkles at the top of the Irish coffee, because they can actually, they've got the capability to produce space mechanics. They can then produce across multiple industries, and I think that's a way that commercial space commercialization can expand and grow other industries, because we then have the commercial capability to produce a wide range of other components for other industries.
Lorita, would you like to jump in on that one?
I don't have really anything to add to that question. Thank you. I agree with Michael on just the integration of the downstream and the upstream.
Good, good.
Can I just mention something very quirky?
Go for it, go for it.
We are building an engineering model of a satellite, and you need solar panels, mimicking solar panels. So we went across to our neighbors. They're a billboard company. They do cutouts And it's just interesting, they're from the marketing and the communications and branding field, and they laser cut for us PC boards that we use on our satellites for testing. I just thought that was quirky. It happened last week. I'm not saying that's how we build satellites, please. But yeah, it's so multidisciplinary in very unexpected ways.
Yeah, just from our side, we're seeing obviously cloud computing, right? 10 years ago, I don't know if there was any cloud computing. But now with the number of satellites that are up there in order to process all of that in a timely manner for clients, they want speed, right? Everything is now. It's like anyone here who has a kid that is afraid to Netflix, they can choose whatever they want whenever they want it. Back in my day, I had to wait, if I got lucky for SABC or KTV for a certain program every hour. But now everything's instantaneous, and I think with that type of emergence of the amount of data that's coming down, the likes of your AWS, those type of, building a center now in Cape Town, that also then drives employment on that side. But that's the main driver for that, is so that we can process these large volumes of data that are coming down and actually make it useful for our end clients. So that's another kind of unseen advantage.
Certainly. James?
Yeah, just throw in another one. It was mentioned yesterday that sort of space is seen as, the spin out of the Apollo program was non-stick frying pans. And new space is very different from that now. So, directly the question, space companies now are looking outside of the space sector for technologies to bring into space. And the modern way of doing it is to take the massive investment that's been put into computer chips, to memories, to mobile phone technology, comms technology, and bring that into space programs, because it massively reduces the cost of space. And that means you're massively reducing the cost to the citizen of the services that are supplied by space. So very much it's turned around. We are pulling in technologies from other industries.
Yeah. I'd actually like to chip in on that one myself. I'll put in another hat. I think it's important to understand the value of cross-functional collaboration. So if you're talking about a multidisciplinary space, you also understand that you probably have certain blind spots in areas where you've never operated. I find really interesting anecdotes of people that have backgrounds in either agriculture or automotive that then provide a solution in aerospace which is far more cost effective than what we would have otherwise imagined. We're seeing that right now in the rocket launch capability space as well. A colleague of mine a couple of years when I was with Denal said, Lesotho, what correlation does farming have with aerospace? I said, well, bird strike test. And you looked at me and said, what? I said, well, you've got to strike the panels with something. Birds, that's what you do. And he laughed. And he said, is there another one? I said, well, manure. You can make a bomb out of that. You don't want to tell everybody, but you could. So if you look deeply enough, you'll always find a way to be able to, on a modular level at the very least, find complementarity. And that's something we need to work quite concertedly at, because it doesn't happen automatically. All right. Did you guys find a question that you like on board? Because we got the last 10 minutes before our session expires, and I'd like to make sure that everybody gets a chance to at least pick one.
I see one from Captain Kirk.
Good, Captain Kirk. Oh my.
Which says...
We got some fans in the club. Good.
Which says, I understand you all have already laid the foundation for this country's... Oh, you can all see the screen and read.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. But is enough being done to prepare the coming generation?
Succession planning. What's your view?
I will share what we are doing. Our team at Rotatso Innovations is all young females. I'm very proud to share that.
Good.
Who come with amazing skills, from your GIS to your remote sensing. And I've always said that we don't build these small businesses to be small businesses forever. Now, what we've decided to do is, yes, people are going to change jobs. Yes, people may decide that maybe Swift Geospatial is better than Hotatsu Innovations. Maybe the pastures are greener there. But for us, it's quite important to give the guidance, to give the training, not only on the technical side, but to say, at some point, you are going to have to pass the baton to the one that comes after you. So it's quite key for us when we bring in, for example, the partners that we work with on projects, we make it clear that whatever skill that you have done or you have brought onto this project has to be shared with our, our young, female employees. So it's quite key, and I think because we've seen that there still is a big gap in terms of obviously the gender within these industries, especially within science. So it's quite important for us to actively and consciously just try to, day by day, change that and really try to expose, our youth in terms of, how is business done? How do you make sure that, you interact with clients? Because I always say that as much as they've got the technical expertise, you still need the softer side of, making sure that we can still one day be proud to say we've built or rather we've groomed a young person, and now they are running their own businesses while maybe perhaps I'm out in Mauritius sipping pina coladas after retirement. Thanks.
Nice one. Michael?
Yeah, thanks. This is really close to my heart because one day I still hope to be a geography teacher at a high school, so if there's any vacancies, no. But I actually think it starts there because just recently we've done a couple of high schools career days and talking about GIS and remote sensing and these types of things. And the one school, I won't mention its name, but the geography teacher came to us afterwards and said, they actually, every year on year, nobody's taking geography as electives. And that's, for me, was incredibly sad to hear because you live on this earth, you should know what's going on. And so maybe it's about even starting back then, back at the high school, looking at the curriculum there and trying to introduce more fundamental new type of enhanced geography, right? Geoinformatics, remote sensing, the ideas of space at that kind of level to start generating more interest. And then from there, we can start building up the youth and more interested into the applications of not just straightforward geography, but what you can build on and use geography moving into career paths. And I think a lot of people don't see career paths past just simple geography. And I think maybe looking back at the curriculum, we've got a better chance.
Good. James?
There was another question from Captain Kirk. It's very popular today, which touches my interest, which was a question about China and our relationship with China. And I'm going to add to that Russia and the whole BRICS environment. I mean, South Africa is a member of BRICS, and obviously there's a desire to move more towards Southern Hemisphere, and I support that. But you're looking at a commercial panel here, and the largest user of space is currently the USA. Over 50% of the entire market is there. And so as commercial companies, we have to make that choice. And working with Chinese companies or Russian companies is pretty much a kiss of death to working in the States. So commercially, all the feedback is that we don't work with China. I won't comment on the political, or I'm only commenting on the political side of it. I wouldn't say whether it's right or wrong, but we do not work with China.
That requires a whiskey, James. That requires a whiskey to have that conversation.
Yeah, I can echo that it does create problems when you integrate even just Chinese components into your product, and you have to declare that to US or EU customers. It does have a ripple effect on your commercial activities, unfortunately.
True. Yes.
Can I ask, nobody asked more questions, because my question is disappearing. I wanna answer Ayukunle because I suspect he's my old student. But he asked, or the student asked, what are we going to do differently compared to the rest of the world when it comes to space industry commercialization? The wonderful thing about the paradigm new space and where we are now is that we have perfect vision looking back at all the errors, trial and errors that others did, not unlike the cell phone, telephony, and all of that. And I think that's what we're going to do differently. It's a good position to be in. Obviously, if we interpret what we see correctly and we plan correctly. So us as a company, we explore partnerships again, but it's across the value chain. It's about engaging with customers. What do you want to achieve? What is your goal? What's your endpoint? And then we go from the application. It must always start there. What do you want to achieve? And then you move up the value chain. For instance, with Namibia, we have that conversation with Dr. Lishu Mundia. We know where they want to go, but let's start at the ground station, let's train, let's put in a design facility, all of those things. They already have hardware that was provided a long time ago that we can leverage from. So this is what we're going to do differently. No, this is what we can do differently if we interpret what we see looking back correctly and we form these partnerships and we go forward intelligently about it.
Thanks. I know you've got a couple of questions you've got on Slido, but we've got our last 3 minutes. So quick closing remarks and a parting shot on what is the role of science communication and science journalism to support the space industry. Delisa? Yes, please.
What was that question again, please?
What is the role of science communication and science journalism to support the space industry?
It's a very key one. There's a lot that is happening out there. There's a lot that government is doing, and I think if it could reach the right audience, we do need to, it would make a significant difference, but also to follow up, because we see all these grand plans and ideas, and we never sometimes hear when they're being implemented so that we can participate. So I think there's a very, very important role, especially again, as we mentioned earlier, on the educating side, that can reach a lot of audience, and again, also making sure that it's accessible in different languages, you know, as part of continuous education. Thanks.
Yeah, a lot about collaboration and in the last 2 days, and I think the role that communication can play there to actually bring silos of people thinking similarly without realizing that together and growing that community and the thinking of the community together. Yesterday I had people saying, well, where have you been hiding? So there's definitely a very important role for the media to also play into bringing what we want to achieve together, like we said yesterday.
Michael? Rob?
Yeah, I think that the message that I agree with, obviously, but I think the message also, we should never trivialize space. Space is becoming a happy environment to operate in. Everybody wants and can do it. I think we must remain respectful of that very finite resource. We must remain respectful that we have to be the absolute best at it. I once famously said, 60% is not enough. I could say that previously in front of a class. It's either 100% or zero. I mean, there's nothing in between. And I think one should always reinforce that message. I'm not saying it's exclusive, not at all, but let's not become too complacent about this environment that we should cherish. So focus on good technology, focus on the partners that will have the most impact with an investment that you do make into space, and I think that should come out. But it's a hugely exciting environment to be in. Obviously, we have to communicate that too.
Right, time is basically up, so I'll be quick. I really just think it's around the two main things on my side is educating not only our youth, but also everyone else still in this audience, that you can still learn more. Everyone here can still learn more, so I think that can greatly assist with that, and then also assist with inclusivity.
I'm going to take it back to the sustainability side and socioeconomic impact or social impact. Science journalism and science communication can really define and provide input on what the actual need is within the country that needs to be solved, and how potentially space solutions or commercial space solutions could solve that need and solve those problems.
Yeah, in closing, I'll come back to Zalanda's point. It's about language. I mean, I challenge that science word. We should talk about space technology, not about space science. When you start talking about space science, people think of astronauts and they think of deep space. All great stuff, very inspirational. But let's get back to what the society needs. And I hope the takeaway from this conference is the farmer who gave a great speech early yesterday morning. That's what this conference should be about. And so I hope when the journalists report on this conference, they report about that, not about some of the other things we've talked about.
100%. Thank you very much. Please join us in front for a quick picture. Program Director, I'd like to call you up front to lead us through. Excuse me. Quick picture here in front.
Thank you so much to you, Lesecha, and the panel for getting us started today on the discussion of space and economic sustainability, on how commercial space ventures contribute to economic sustainability. A round of applause, please, for this panel, who consisted of James Barrington Brown, Anna Mielo, Michael Bretzger, Ndelisa Didiza, Rob van Zyl, Lorita Crystalis, and our amazing moderator who made sure that we ended on time, Lesecha Mogoba. Ladies and gentlemen, before we break for the tea, reception have come to me to let me know that there is a leader here who has lost their laptop. Someone has misplaced their laptop. It is a Dell silver laptop. I ask, please, that you maybe check the seat next to you, check your bags. Maybe you took someone else's laptop and not your own. Please. Everyone is laughing. Leaders, please, it can be quite distressful to lose your personal items. If you have found it or if you know where it is, if you could please leave it at reception. It is a Dell silver laptop. I'm sure the owner would be very grateful to receive that item back. We're now going to break for tea. It's taking place in the exhibition hall to my right, your left. We're going to return here to start the next discussion at exactly 11:30. So I ask, ladies and gentlemen, that we all be seated by 11:30, and it would be grateful if I had your attention. Or have we found the laptop? Have we found the laptop? Oh, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the tea break is going to take place at the exhibition hall. The next session